First of all, let me say that we hope that you and your families and all your friends are staying home and all are safe, whether it's due to COVID or due to protests in the US. We are really excited that you made the decision to stay ahead of the curve and join our meetup today. Just to introduce myself, my name is 𝐈𝐋𝐄𝐃𝐔. I'm from Vacuumlabs and I will be your host this evening or evening in Europe. We decided to reach out to some developers and people from US community who are our friends, and we asked them to share their experience with the current situation and to what is happening in the US, because connecting with the community across the ocean and sharing the experiences, that's what we do, that's what we're good at, and that's what we want to provide. And now it's more important than ever. So I would like to welcome the Paris Chandler and Ben ILgebodu from the US. And Paris, the stage is yours. We are looking forward to what you can tell us.
Sure. Happy to be here. Nice to meet everyone. My name's Paris Athena. I'm creator of Black Tech Twitter and founder of Black Tech Pipeline. I live in Boston, Massachusetts. And yeah, I'm just going to talk about sort of my experience, the perspective, and what's going on here. It's really complicated and it runs really deep, and it's way longer than the discussion we're about to have or what I'm about to explain. So I know that the news is portrayed differently in different parts of the world. And so I don't know if in your area, maybe the media is portraying things like, you know, with Black Lives Matter, that we're here protesting and rioting and destroying buildings and just acting crazy. So what's really going on is that Black people and our allies come from all different backgrounds, we are protesting for, you know, the end of police brutality, for justice, for equality, for equity. Black people in America, and I know in different parts of the world as well, we are not treated equally. We, you know, a lot of times we don't get justice. And an example of that is like, you know, George Floyd has just passed because a police officer kneeled into his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and he ended up passing away from that. George Floyd is not the first Black man to have been killed by a police officer. This goes back all the way to slavery. It's something that continuously happens. And if you compare the treatment of Black people to white people in America, it's completely different. And it's really unfair, and it's due to like white privilege, it's due to racism, it's due to prejudice, discrimination. And we're sick of it, pretty much. We're sick of being treated this way. We're sick of, you know, police officers getting away with harming us and targeting us and killing us. And so this is why we protest. Now, the way the media portrays protesting is that we're rioting and destroying buildings and burning things down. This is how the media works. Police officers, they will enter protests as a protester. They come undercover as protesters. And so do white nationalists. White nationalists are like, you know, the KKK, the racists. They'll come disguised as protesters. And what they'll do is they'll cause chaos by throwing things at buildings, starting fires and things like that. And then you have the Black youth and other people who are at the protest. They're at the protest in rage. They're angry. They're angry at how their community is being treated in this country that says, you know, they have equal rights for all when they don't. So you have people there that are angry. And now, you know, you see looting going on and people throwing things and breaking things. And then they join in with that. And is that right? No. But at the same time, you know, this is how you get people riled up. Like they're angry, they want to take out their frustrations, because no matter what we do, things don't change for us in this country. No matter how many times we protest, how many times we riot, how many times we speak our minds, nothing seems to change. And so, you know, so they join in on these looting and riots, and then police come in and they start shooting rubber bullets and, you know, macing people and things like that. And that's what the media is going to show you. They're going to show you what happens after someone else starts all of this chaos. They're going to show you Black people, you know, acting wild, acting crazy, being angry. That's what the media is going to portray to you, but they're not going to show you how it started. And the reason for that is so that they can continue to portray this stereotype that, you know, Black people are angry and dangerous and violent, and this is why they get arrested. This is why they go to jail. This is why they're killed by police. Like, they try to justify our anger by portraying something that isn't true to you. Yeah, this is just a really long discussion, and it's really angering. I don't know. I think Ben can jump in with more to say, and I'd love to get into deeper discussion. It's just there's so many ways we can talk about this, so many different things we can discuss. So I'm going to end it for me, and then Ben can jump in with more.
Yes, thank you, Paris, for that. Like, excellent explanation about the riots and the protests really that have been happening. And thank you for the organizers for inviting me. I'm used to actually sharing about and speaking at conferences about React and TypeScript, so this is a little different experience for me, a little more serious, obviously. But just to introduce myself, my name is Ben. I live with my family in California in the States. I'm a principal front-end engineer at Stitch Fix, as you might have guessed from the t-shirt. We're an online clothing service that's in the US and the UK. So the last 2-3 weeks or so since George Floyd's murder, as Paris mentioned, they've been crazy. And I've had my own experiences. Paris has had her own experiences. Everyone has had their own experiences. So, you know, we're coming here trying to explain what's going on, but it's our own experiences. We don't speak for all Black people because they all have their own experiences. So we just want to kind of give you information about what's going on. And really, in the last 3 or 4 months, there have been 3 murders. So George Floyd's murder in May is kind of what sparked all these. But Breonna Taylor was killed in March, and Ahmaud Arbery was killed in February. Both similarly racist, I would call it, activities. So, and there have been many, 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 many times before that we've died because of police brutality. So my earliest memory, in fact, was a man named Rodney King in LA who was beat hundreds of times by police in 1991. So we're talking about 30 years ago. I was 7 years old at the time. And that's my first memory of, like, wow, because of the color of my skin, I can be treated differently. And in fact, people look at me differently, and I may not be safe because of it. So these protests that have happened is like the country saying, finally, like, this is a problem and this needs to stop and something needs to change. So like Paris said, I don't know exactly what you all are hearing from the media, what they're telling you. And yes, there have been riots, but for the most part, they've been protests, and they've been peaceful protests. So just the other day on the Golden Gate Bridge, half of the bridge was covered with people just walking and blocking traffic and protesting against what's going on. So it's been peaceful. It's been, I would say, annoying to people maybe, but it has to have an effect on people for people to actually understand and appreciate what's going on. So it's not just Black people now protesting as it has been in the past. It's been allies as well, people who also agree that this needs to stop. So it's just a sign showing that like something needs to change. It can't be the same way again. And this no longer can go back to normal. So it's like my hope that progress against police brutality and all these prejudice that have happened, that we'll look back at 2020 and see it as an inflection point of, just like we see the civil rights movement in the United States. So when Martin Luther King, unfortunately, was murdered in the 1960s, it was a sign of no longer having separation between races that was legislated. I hope we can look back and see that this time will be a time where we move from that. My worry is that, you know, 2 months from now, when COVID dies down and we're no longer confined to our houses, that people will forget and that they'll move on and be distracted. But I do have hope because, like, a lot of my coworkers, a lot of my friends, for the first time, have like reached out to me and actually asked me how I was doing with all things that are going on. So I think there's a realization that there's really a problem, and I really need this to change, because I am the target person. Like, even if I'm not doing anything wrong, I can have the cops called on me and then anything can happen. Like, when I walk around my neighborhood with my kids or even by myself, I have to make sure that I don't look threatening at all. Like, if it's cold outside, I take off my hood on my hoodie. I can't have my hoodie on because I may look threatening. I can't have my hat turned backwards. You know, I try to look as much as I belong so that someone doesn't get the idea that, oh, he doesn't belong here, let me call the cops. Then who knows what they've told the cops, and who knows what kind of cops are going to show up, and then, you know, my life can be taken away from me just from doing nothing, basically. So that's the kind of world that, when I see all of these events happen, like, it reminds me that I'm not completely safe. And it's all because of deep-seated biases and prejudices that have happened since slavery time in the 1700s, and it's just trickled down from there. And we could talk more about it. But it needs to change. So, like, what I ask people, even not in the United States, it's that I challenge them to look at themselves and see what biases and prejudices you have within you, because we all have them, right? The question is whether or not you hold somebody down because of those prejudices, right? So we can be aware of them. Once we know, then we can try to not let it affect how we treat other people. And then as a result, we can all have little steps to improvement. And then when we put all those little steps together, hopefully big change happens. So I was asked, like, what am I doing to try to help with this cause? And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to mentor young Black youth in the area to try to help make things better. Because growing up, and a lot of Black youth right now, they don't have role models that are role models besides people who are entertainers. Like, they believe the only way that I can be successful is if I'm an athlete, if I'm a singer, if I'm a dancer, if I'm an actor. Like, that's all they see, and I want them to be able to see other examples. So I try to be that myself, but then also point them to other people. So mentoring is kind of the way that I've tried to help. And I want to get more Black people in tech as well, because if there's more people, if we have more representation, hopefully some of those biases and prejudices will go away. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Yeah, thanks for listening again. I appreciate your attention. Thanks again to the team for letting me share. Andy, Mishka, Sarah, Miki, for allowing me to be here. And now we can turn it over to some Q&A for those who have questions.
We will proceed to the Q&A, but first of all, let me thank you for sharing your views, opinions, experiences. Like, it's quite difficult for me in Europe to hear that, because like, I cannot imagine, but I could hear a little bit of positivity there in those peaceful protests, and the communities, other communities joining in, and I hope and fingers crossed that it will change, and that everyone will have an equal right, and nobody will have to just be afraid to walk on the street, and just do not look threatening for whatever reason. So thank you very much for joining in. Like, it's been awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I don't see any questions in Q&As, but I have one question. I'm curious, because I know, Ben, that you are in California, Paris, you are in Boston. And is the situation any different on East Coast and on West Coast? Like, is there a difference, or is it the same everywhere?
You mean the response to it, or the situation?
Also the situation, like, because even in my country, as small as Slovakia, like the difference between like the capital and the other regions is huge. So how is it in the US, and also the situation and the responses? I have seen the riots in Minnesota, but as you said, like, that's not the whole picture, obviously.
Yeah.
At least for over here in Boston, I want to say the only, maybe that it's smaller because there's not as many people. But I mean, like in Boston, like we've had a few riots, not as big as like what's happening in Minneapolis and other areas, but you know, we've had also peaceful protests, like a lot of them, and tons of people show up and they're marching and protesting, and it's peaceful and everything. But as for like what's happening with police, I want to say that happens everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and even in my own little city in Boston, because I live in Cambridge specifically, you know, we have racism within our own police department, and we're trying to fight that. And that's on a smaller scale. That's not even the whole city of Boston, you know? And so I feel like that's just what it is in all areas of the US. I don't know if you agree, Ben.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think what this has shown is that there's racism everywhere, right? So this could happen anywhere. And yeah, we've had protests. Like, I live in the Bay Area, so the Bay Area is pretty large, 7-8 million people. And there are lots of different cities in the Bay Area, and each one of those cities have had their own little protests. They walk from one place to City Hall. Like, that's kind of been the thing that everybody's been doing. And it's happening everywhere. So that's encouraging to me, because it's not just the big cities. It's not just where things have already happened. It's like people are really showing that they care and they don't want this to happen again. But yeah, I mean, I shared my experience with how I feel walking around. Like, that happens anywhere. Mm-hmm. And really, what also happens everywhere in the United States is this concept of, I mean, I guess I'm going to get into details, but this concept of what is called white flight. So what happens, and it happens all over the country, is that there'll be a neighborhood, predominantly white. You'll have some Black people who somehow, whatever, are able to make it into these white neighborhoods that are considered affluent or, you know, above. And then once those enough Black people join, all the white people leave. And then it becomes a Black neighborhood, and the cycle continues and continues. And that happened in my hometown in Houston. I'm certain it happened in Boston. It's happened in the Bay Area as well. So it's like, and that's all driven off of biases, because, you know, we can't live around black people are scary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I mean, that's happening everywhere. Gentrification, like it's just happening everywhere. You know, what my small city of Cambridge, it used to be so many Black and brown people. It was so diverse. And then more white people started moving in, and you know, the prices were raised and the Black people and brown people couldn't afford it, so they had to move out. And now the culture that we used to have, like food stores of like Spanish food, Southern food, like all that diversity is gone, you know. And I don't see a lot of people who look like me now. It's been taken over and all of my people have left, and you know, it's happening everywhere. And then
Yep.
you know, and then you have like this community of mainly white people who now they're dominant. Their word is more important over the smaller voices of the Black and brown communities here. You know, they're taking over in the school district. They're taking over in jobs, and I don't know. It's this whole ripple effect, and it's everywhere. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah,
It's happening in San Francisco as well.
Mm-hmm.
Exact same thing.
Yeah, I have seen this in New York pretty much when I was there. You know, like gentrification.
Yep.
Because of the prices. Yeah, thank you for your answer. And we have one more question here. What could we do in Slovakia to aid in the US? Charities, funds you recommend, education activities. How can we reach out to community, to your community in the US?
Yeah, so I think, so first of all, you don't listen to the news. I think what you need to do is revolve yourself around communities of the people going through it. So you need to revolve yourself around the Black community, around the brown community. You know, you have social networks, you have Twitter, which is a great place to get involved with people who look differently than you, people who have different experiences than you. Get involved with those networks. You know, you can continue to like donate and bring awareness through your own platform. So you can speak on it yourself. You can contribute to the conversation. You can donate money to different organizations that are trying to empower Black people. You can do things like that, but you definitely want to have people who look differently than you, get them within your network, like, you know, engage with them, build relationships with them, take advantage of those types of opportunities. It's really important because then you're going to get it from, you know, you're going to get valuable information that's honest. You're not going to be listening to the media who wants to portray something that probably isn't true, you know? So.
Yeah, or at least not the complete truth.
Right.
Yeah, and the other part I would add, that's perfect. The other part I would add is just calling out racism when you see it. So that's like a great way. So there are a lot of what they call microaggressions or micro racisms that people have, like, oh, your name is interesting, or all kinds of certain things. And when you hear it, instead of laughing with them or being silent, actually calling it out. And as we kind of bring more and more of those things to the light, then hopefully it can't exist as much, and we all become better because of it.
Yeah, bring awareness, educate your peers, get them involved with our communities, you know.
Great answers. I hope that Mate is also satisfied with the answer. Thank you once again. This is the end of the QA. So have a wonderful week, and thank you for stopping by on our meetup. Thank you.
Of course.
Thanks really great. Cheers, guys.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.